Hey everybody, I'm a major disappointment. SpartanBodie, and this is not the session recap you were hoping for. I'm sorry, I need another week. Between adjusting to new baby at home and being up late at night helping with feeding and going back to work, this last week ended up being a lot. So, I need a little more time, so I thank you in advance for your patience and your understanding. This next session recap is going to be worth it, trust me. We had so much fun. Holy smokes, incredible session. Easily one of my favorite that I've DM'd ever. And a lot of that was in thanks to my players. When I get to sit around for 50 minutes and just let them roleplay and I get to listen and take notes and figure out new things about their characters that I didn't really know beforehand, yeah, that's awesome. And one of the reasons that was so successful is because I found myself prepared for the session. Now, if you've ever sat down to prep your D&D session and just freaked out because you didn't know what to expect out of any kind of overland travel or overseas travel, well, my friends, you're in luck, because I have another tool for your DM kit. Now, this one is handwritten. My wife is still working on creating a much nicer, much more professional version of this. But if you're wanting to do any travel in your upcoming sessions and need a little kick in the rear, got you covered. I used this in this last session, and one of my players texted me the day after and told me that I actually succeeded in making travel fun. So if you have ever dreaded an upcoming session because it was one of those travel sessions, well, kick back, because this video's for you. As we get started, I did want to let you know, I want to share a special story with you at the end of this video. Something incredible, really just phenomenal happened to me this last week, and I wanted you to know about it. So if you don't mind sticking around for that, I hope it'll be worth your time. Other than that, let's get into discussing travel. At its heart, D&D is really meant to be a game about fighting monsters. That's really what it was designed to be. There's a whole book dedicated to all the monsters that you can fight, another book dedicated towards teaching the players how they can fight these monsters to the best of their abilities, and a third book for the DMs that run the game in order to make it interesting once the players actually get to where the monster's gonna be and what kind of treasure it has in wait for them after being destroyed. And as a matter of fact, when Gary Gygax and his friends started playing D&D, they actually used another board game to simulate the travel experience, getting from the town to the dungeon, as it were. Now, I am in no way suggesting that. I think there are plenty of fun ways to incorporate travel just using the rules in D&D as you find them in the DMG, Dungeon Master's Guide, or the PHB. However, I also know that sometimes session prep can be tough. So as promised, I present to you the Overland Travel Document. Now, this table/template is ultimately there for you to do all of the heavy lifting during your session prep. This document in no way is meant to undercut your ability to improvise or provide your party with something new as they make a decision while traveling, but it should take the edge off in terms of any of the fear or the worry when it comes to what does overland travel or overseas travel look like in this particular region at this particular time. So let's talk about that. By the way, this document will be in Dropbox and the link for it will be in the description of this video. So go ahead and check it out there if you're wanting to print off a version of it for yourself and follow along there, or just start working on it while we're talking. Shoot, I don't know your life. That being said, we've got a lot of fun things here. Well, at least I think so because I created the document, so. Up at the top is your friendly little reminder that, hey, your party is a certain level. Make sure you're not prepping too much crazy stuff for them that they're not gonna be able to handle on the road. To the right of that is the season. Traveling looks different depending on what time of year your party is traveling. And this probably will come into play in this section down here, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Beneath both of those is the region of travel. Knowing what the local climate is of this region is gonna be pretty impactful as well. Below that, I've provided a space for you to write down where the destination is for your party. Where is it that they're going? And how long will it take you to get there? And in this space here is a spot for you to tally off days or hours or count down. Who knows? That's free space for you. This should hopefully help you keep track of time while your party is progressing, which is good because knowing how long they have to travel means you know exactly what to expect and how many things to have prepared on the document otherwise. If we're talking about a span of a few days, then you don't have to prep as much. You can have a lot fewer options in terms of social, exploration, or combat encounters, as opposed to, months worth of travel in which you should have multiple things prepared in that case because you're ultimately going to want to make it feel pretty random. And speaking of random, beneath that, there's a nifty little chart that I created that hopefully will help you figure out any kind of random weather that your party might encounter. I have several preset ranges that hopefully will allow you to determine the probability of certain kinds of weather patterns for this climate during this season. So from temperature to wind to precipitation, you'll be making 3 rolls. rolls. Well, potentially 4 if you're needing to change the temperature. And it should be noted that none of this stuff is definite. If you're just rolling randomly, then you still have the power as the DM if you don't like the roll. If your rolls are just super crazy and you're going from super hot to super cold day after day after day, your characters might wonder what's up. Now granted, there might be some really cool, super magical reason that's happening. But if not, you also might want to consider that it's okay to ignore some of these things. That is there in case you would like to spice things up in your travel. We'll dedicate a video to weather, as I think weather is pretty important for how your party plans travel or interacts with people on the road, or really just goes about their day in general. But either way, back to the weather. Let's talk wind. For a standard season, rolling between 1 and 12 on a d20 means that there's really not much wind for that day. Now, during a spring or a fall season, I might consider a 1 to 12 being light wind, but that's up to you. In this case, a 13 through a 17 would then be light wind, and an 18 through a 20 would be heavy winds. Note that any kind of heavy wind might mean a certain range at which ranged attacks become a disadvantage because the arrows are going to get blown off course. That might be a really fun way of spicing up a random encounter. If all of a sudden they are incapable of being at long range and being successful, that's going to change the outcome and the dynamics of the fight. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. Heavy winds also might slow down a party in their traveling. You might consider adding half a day, just because of the gusts of winds that slow you down and cause you to have to work that much harder to keep a normal pace. That, or you cut a couple hours of travel off and have them make exhaustion checks earlier. The same rules can be applied to precipitation. A 1 to 12 might mean there's no rain or snow that day. A 13 to 17 might mean light snow or rain, and an 18 through 20 would mean heavy snow and rain. Now, I do have on this chart that if you are to roll randomly and get 2 natural 20s, so in essence, heavy rain and heavy winds, we're looking at a pretty serious storm. This should become the exploration encounter for the day. You might consider throwing a hurricane or a tornado at the party. Just a thought, but that would be a pretty interesting shakeup to a day of travel, don't you think? Certainly breaks the monotony of you walk all day and find your campsite. Now after this point, I'm gonna have us jump all the way over to here. This is our travel event roll chart. Again, you're gonna be rolling a d20, or rather, if you're like me, you're gonna have one of your party members roll a d20. And it should be noted that on this chart, not every number needs to have a specific event. If we're looking at our dice statistically, a d20 has a 5% chance of landing on any one specific number. So if you believe that certain kinds of encounters are going to be more likely than another, have a range for which you could roll a specific kind of encounter. For instance, on my travel roll chart, there is a 15% chance for a combat encounter. That's it, 1 through 3. 1 is already set and determined by me as one of the nastier things that the party could face, at least in this instance. I'll probably change that up from time to time so that it's not always a natural 1 resulting in combat for the party when they're traveling. Gotta keep them on your toes. But that being said, if it falls within the range of a combat encounter and it's not the pre-programmed nasty one that I had thought through, I would then come over here and roll on the combat encounter. And there would be 3 or 4 that I've set up over there, up to, it looks like a max of 10 on this chart, which, if you have 10 different kinds of encounters, whoa, that sounds like a pretty rough area. But sounds also like an area that needs to be traveled through by adventurers capable of fighting monsters. Underneath that encounter description is also potential loot. That way you can just kind of have a couple of things prepped ahead of time, and really that's the name of the game here. You're doing all of the heavy lifting up front, and a lot of it can span actually beyond just the single session that you have upcoming. For instance, the chart that I've created, I can use so long as they are within this peninsula area. If they decide to keep traveling, I'll just have them keep rolling 1 every day. And the beauty of it is that it's already set. There's nothing for me to actually have to sweat over because I've done all of the heavy lifting before I've actually gotten to the session. Now, this does take time, but the more I worked on it, the more fun I had actually thinking about what travel could mean. And I guarantee you, the more effort you put into it, well, don't spend so much time that you miss out on what the actual session is supposed to be, but the more time you put into prepping what the travel could look like in this particular reason, at this season, at your party's level, the more fun your party is going to have while traveling. The beauty of this chart is that it allows you more freedom as the DM to not really have to worry about trying not to make travel feel random and actually have it be random without taking away your focus on what is actually important for the session. Back to the chart. So that 15% would be covered from just 1 through 3. Now between 4, 5, and 6, I might decide if they roll there, I actually don't want anything to happen. You can write in, nothing eventful happens on this day of travel. Perhaps 7 and 8 has something to do with some inclement weather coming in. You might even roll to see if that weather is particularly dangerous. It's an option for you. Or if you have it planned for that day, maybe this inclement weather means that there is going to be less travel accomplished that day. Add half a day to the total travel needed in order to get to their destination. That happened in this last session. They ended up needing to take 3.5 days to get to their destination instead of 3, and that worked out beautifully. We'll get to that next week. Now, perhaps in this region, there are a couple of things they might run into that don't really fall into the realms of combat or social interaction. All of those, my friends, are considered exploration encounters. And that's what this section right here is. This section I had as the largest range on my travel event roll chart. I'm pretty sure I gave it like 30 to 35% chance. So between 6 and 7 numbers. And in that case, if they were to roll one of those numbers, I would then have them roll a d8. And yes, I did go through and create one option for every single spot there, because I felt like this region had more to offer exploration-wise than it did combat-wise or social interaction-wise. So that's where I did most of my prep in terms of what it is that they could encounter. And without spoiling what the session holds, they ended up finding one of my favorite possible things on this list. They rolled super well, and I was very pumped. But I don't want to tease you too much about it, so we're just going to move right on. Now, because they're still traveling, I'm not going to go into detail about what all the options were that I had in this region, but it could be something from some scenery that you want to describe in greater detail. Maybe it's a beautiful sight off of a cliff or a beautiful sunset. Perhaps they encounter some mythical creature or beast that could not possibly pose a threat to them, or see it from a distance and understand that it's best to just stay away. That can be a fun little moment for them to just see something off in the distance and, I don't know, feel like they're caught up in nature. Perhaps there's a shooting star, or in the case of one of my players, some special attachment to the moon, as this player is a cleric in service to Kamaria, who is quite literally the goddess of the moon, also of creation, and full moons mean something very important to him, as it does to the Church of Kamaria. And so it was one of those neat moments where I was actually able to tell him, this is how much longer you have until the next full moon. It gives him time to prep and be ready for whatever it is that his character is going to do on that night. So the more we think about how we can have these things be specifically tied to our characters, again, the more fun travel is going to seem, because our characters are going to be thinking about their lives, their stories, their experiences, and how those things change based on their environment around them. So that then brings us to the possible social encounters. Now, on a well-traveled highway, there's likely going to be a lot more social interactions than there are where my party's currently at, with traveling the cliffside of the Lover's Peninsula of Karis. But there are some interactions there, should they roll the right number on the travel chart. And again, there is a checkbox next to each one of these, so as you go through and complete that, go ahead and check it off, and that way you know not to do it again. Or at least wait until the timer resets before you actually go for that kind of encounter again. Not that it couldn't happen twice, but the event is unlikely, especially within a certain amount of time. You did a lot of work. Don't do the same thing twice, not unless you have to. Now, over here, we have the foraging table and results chart. Let's say that one of your characters is a ranger, and he doesn't want to use rations, but instead wants to help provide food for his party by going and hunting every day, or go foraging for herbs or plant life. Well, there is a chart for that too, my friend. I provided 4 different spaces, each one offering a range of rolls based on a survival check that your ranger or scout rogue or whatever the character is that wants to go off and try and hunt. The results go from negative to neutral, positive to very successful. And I provided an additional chart for every single space to accommodate for multiple different outcomes that your character might find depending on the roll that they make. For a negative roll, maybe it's actually a combat encounter. Perhaps they happen upon an owl bear or a venomous plant. Perhaps they find poisonous mushrooms and don't know they're poisonous. Neutral results might just be a fun little scenery moment, or something small and insignificant that really isn't going to benefit the party unless they have some means of turning some berries that they find into good berries. Hey, there you go, druids and rangers. Positive results are going to have some sort of little small boon to the party, and are likely going to be the most common thing if you're dealing with a ranger or a scout rogue, as they're going to have a pretty decent modifier in their survival checks. And lastly, the very successful category, or double plus, is likely going to have some sort of rare reward that perhaps your character didn't see coming. Maybe they find a secret stash, or some rare herb or plant that might have some magical benefits, something they could sell in town, or perhaps they find a cave or a dungeon that's been hidden away. That could be really fun too. Needless to say, all of these options definitely present for a super potential fun time while your party is traveling. So that being said, I hope that this is a benefit to you. I know that my party really enjoyed rolling and finding out what the day might hold, and as a result, it made for an interesting and really fun travel session, one that you will hear way more about next Tuesday. Again, thank you for your understanding and patience. It really means a lot to me as we're adjusting to our new normal of having baby boy at home. Thank you. And if you know a DM who really dislikes travel and finds it monotonous and would benefit from having a little extra prep to maybe spice it up or have things done ahead of time so that they don't have to worry about it, please send them the link to this video. I would be honored. And in addition to that, you should join our Discord, and so should they. I'm just gonna brag on my community for a bit. We've got some wonderful, humble beginnings, and by no means is this a large community yet, but They're already jumping in and supporting each other. In fact, I have a friend who is a DM who actually playtested some of his fishing rules in the Discord the other day, and it looked like a lot of fun, and then posted them for everyone else to use should they want to. So this community is already becoming an awesome place of sharing ideas and new concepts and really just benefiting the other DMs or players that are a part of this community. So if any of this has been helpful to you, please let me know in the comments below. And I would like to share with you the awesome thing that happened to me this last week. So from the very start of me launching this channel, a couple of family members of mine have picked up on this, in particular 2 of my cousins, and they've been incredibly supportive and have reached out to me to let me know how much they enjoy the videos. So much so that they wanted me to have something that had been sitting on one of their bookcases for a little while. And that was this book. This is the Player's Handbook to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, written by Gary Gygax himself. It was also called AD&D back in the day. And as it turns out, when I was reading the note that my cousin John had attached, he let me know that this book was special for more than just that reason, but that it used to be my dad's. My dad put his name in the top left corner of just about all the books that he owned. And my dad died a little over 3 years ago. And that was really hard. So to open up a piece of mail from my cousins that was not only near and dear to my heart and what I'm doing with this community, but that belonged to him, man, that was really special. So John and Andy, thank you. Guys, that really meant a lot. My dad was an awesome storyteller, and yesterday would have been his 60th birthday. So the timing was really cool for this gift, and I'm just touched at what this community is already becoming. So that being said, thank you for being on this ride with me. I hope that you being here causes you to fall in love with storytelling the way that my dad really imbued that love into me. I remember reading lots of books and watching tons of movies, from The Lord of the Rings to Harry Potter to Star Wars to history books and television shows, sci-fi, fantasy, drama, you name it. My dad's love of storytelling became my own. And what's important is that stories matter to us. They change us. They give us new experiences and help us to understand a perspective that we didn't have beforehand. And that's ultimately why I'm so passionate about this channel, about this community, about what this game can be, and what finding a gaming group could do for you. Ties heavily back into one of my very first videos, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. I'm really glad that you're a part of this community. If you wish to join our Discord server, that link will be in the description below. If you wish to reach out to me on social media, both my Twitter handle and my Instagram handle are also in the description below. And you rock. I hope you know that you've got someone in your corner, and I'm very thankful for your support. And if you don't mind hitting that like and subscribe and sharing this video with anyone who might need it or like to see it, thank you. I really appreciate it. And as always, adventure is calling. Are you listening?